They're hurting my sister. She's dying. Please, please save her." Those words came from a 6-year-old girl, barefoot, shivering, blood on her torn nightgown, standing in a room full of killers. She'd run 8 blocks through the deadliest neighborhood in Detroit at 10 o'clock at night to find the one man dangerous enough to help. She grabbed his sleeve, and her tiny, bloody fingers left streaks across his $12,000 suit jacket. Vincent, the ghost Malone, hadn't felt a thing in 12 years. He'd buried every emotion the night he lost his little sister. But tonight, staring into this child's eyes, the ice cracked. Tonight, the ghost came back to life. If this story moves you, subscribe and follow this journey to the very end. Comment what city you're watching from. Let me see how far this story travels. The phone rang at 9:47 on a Tuesday night, and Harper Dawson almost didn't answer it. She was on her knees in a third-floor office on West Grand Boulevard, dragging a mop across tiles that never seemed to get clean. Her back screamed. Her wrists ached. She'd been awake since 4:30 that morning. First the coffee shop on Woodward, then the flower cart on Michigan Avenue, and now this. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, 4 hours of sleep if she was lucky. But her phone kept buzzing, and the name on the screen made her stomach drop. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor. Harper grabbed it. "Hello? Harper, you need to come home right now." The old woman's voice was shaking. Not annoyed, not complaining about noise, shaking. "There's someone in your apartment. I hear screaming. I hear Rosie. Oh God, I hear Rosie crying." The mop hit the floor before the sentence ended. Harper was already running. 6 blocks, that's all it was. 6 blocks between her and the only person on this earth who mattered. 6 blocks between her baby sister and whatever was happening behind that door. She ran and she prayed, and she made deals with a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Please, not her. Take everything from me, but not her." She knew who was in that apartment. She knew before Mrs. Patterson said another word. She knew because Brandon Cole had called her 14 times that day, and she hadn't picked up once. She knew because the last voicemail he'd left said, "You think you can just walk away from me? You think that's how this works?" Harper hit the stairwell of her building and took the steps 3 at a time. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. The door was wide open, hanging crooked on one hinge like someone had kicked it in. And there he was. Brandon stood in the middle of her living room, if you could call a 400-square-foot studio a living room. His eyes were red. A bottle of Jack Daniels dangled from his left hand, half empty. His right hand was balled into a fist, and his knuckles were already bruised. Rosie was pressed into the far corner behind the kitchen counter, her arms wrapped around her knees, tears streaming down her face. Her pink nightgown was torn at the shoulder. "There she is," Brandon said, and he smiled. That smile, the one that used to fool her, the one that made her believe, for 6 stupid months, that maybe she'd finally found someone who cared. "I've been waiting for you, Harper." "Get away from her." Harper's voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it, not in front of Rosie. "Brandon, I swear to God, if you touched her..." "Or what?" He took a step toward her. "What are you going to do? Call the cops? You know what happens if you call the cops. CPS shows up. They see this apartment. They see your record. They take Rosie, and she goes into the system. Just like you did." The words hit harder than any punch, because he was right. That was the trap. That had always been the trap. Harper had a juvenile record, breaking and entering at 15 when she was homeless and starving. She'd gotten it sealed, but sealed didn't mean gone. Not really. Not when you lived in a world where men like Brandon knew how to pull strings. "You belong to me, Harper." He said it like a fact, like the sky is blue and water is wet. "You don't get to leave." "I already left, Brandon." She stood between him and Rosie now. That was all that mattered. She was the wall. She was always the wall. 3 months ago. "We're done. Get out of my apartment." He hit her. Not a slap, a closed fist straight across the jaw. Harper's head snapped to the side. Stars burst across her vision. She tasted copper and salt, and the world tilted 45 degrees. But she didn't fall. She couldn't fall, because if she fell, he'd get to Rosie. "Liv!" Rosie screamed from the corner. That's what Rosie called her, not Harper, not sister. Liv. Because when Rosie was 2 and trying to say love, it came out as live, and it stuck. "Stay down there, baby," Harper said. Her voice was steady. Blood ran from the corner of her mouth. "Close your eyes for me, okay? Just close your eyes." Brandon grabbed her hair. He twisted it around his fist and yanked her head back. "You embarrassed me. You changed your number. You told people at the coffee shop not to let me in. You think I'm some kind of joke?" "I think you're a coward," Harper said, and she knew it would cost her. She said it anyway. He threw her into the kitchen counter. The edge caught her ribs and something cracked. She heard it before she felt it. Then the pain came, white hot and blinding, and this time her knees buckled. He kicked her, once, twice, 3 times, ribs, stomach, back. Harper curled into herself, arms over her head, and she took it. She took every hit, because every second he spent on her was a second he wasn't touching Rosie. But Rosie was watching. 6 years old, and she was watching her sister get beaten on a kitchen floor, and Harper could hear her sobbing, choking on her own breath. And that sound was worse than any broken bone. Brandon paused. He was breathing hard, sweating. He stepped back and took another pull from the bottle. "Get up, we're going for a ride. All 3 of us." Harper's left eye was swelling shut. Her right wrist bent at an angle that made her nauseous. Blood pooled on the linoleum under her cheek. But through the blur, through the one eye that still worked, she found Rosie. 6 years old, blonde curls, blue eyes so big they swallowed the world, clutching a stuffed elephant named Henry that Harper had bought at Goodwill for $2. Harper looked at that face, and something inside her caught fire. She pushed herself up on one arm. "Rosie," her voice was quiet, calm, the way she talked when Rosie had nightmares. "Remember what I told you? If something bad ever happens and I tell you to run?" Rosie nodded, tears pouring. "Run. Go find help. Go now." "I'm not leaving you, Liv." "I love you, Rosie. Now go. Run." Brandon turned toward Rosie, and in that half-second window, Harper grabbed the Jack Daniels bottle from the counter and swung it into the side of his head. Glass shattered. Bourbon sprayed across the wall. Brandon staggered, howling, clutching his face. Rosie ran. She slipped past Brandon like water through a crack. Out the broken door, into the hallway, down the stairs, into the night. Bare feet, pink nightgown torn at the shoulder. 6 years old, alone, in the most dangerous neighborhood in Detroit at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. And she ran. Behind her, the building disappeared into the dark. Ahead of her, East Side Detroit stretched out like a mouth with broken teeth. Streetlights flickered or didn't work at all. Alleys breathed cold air and the smell of garbage. Somewhere to her left, a man slumped against a wall yelled something she didn't understand. Rosie ran. Her feet slapped the frozen concrete, and each step sent a shock of cold up through her bones. The air burned her lungs, 22 degrees, and she didn't have a jacket. She didn't have shoes. She didn't have anything except Henry the elephant stuffed under her arm and the sound of her sister's voice in her head. "Go find help." Help? Where? Mrs. Patterson was 73 years old and walked with a cane. The coffee shop was closed. There was a fire station 4 blocks east, but Rosie didn't know that. She was 6. She knew the way to school, the way to the park, and the way to the corner store where Mr. Kim gave her free lollipops on Fridays. And she knew one other thing. 3 weeks ago, Harper had taken her to Madison Avenue to buy flowers for the cart. They'd walked past a building with dark windows, and a heavy wooden door, and a woman on the street, Rosie couldn't remember her name, had pulled Harper aside and said, "Don't ever go near that place. The most dangerous people in the whole city go in there." Rosie had stared at that door. Dangerous people. The most dangerous. And tonight, running through the dark with blood on her nightgown, her sister's blood, a 6-year-old brain made a calculation that would change everything. Dangerous means strong. Strong means they can save Liv. She turned left on Madison. The iron chandelier didn't look like much from the outside. A converted warehouse with a mahogany door and no sign. No windows facing the street. 2 men in black coats stood outside, hands in their pockets, watching the empty road. Rosie stopped at the corner, breathing hard. Her chest hurt. Not just from running, her heart. The thing inside her chest that the doctors said was broken. The thing that made her dizzy sometimes. That turned her lips blue when she ran too hard. That cost $85,000 to fix. Her heart was racing now, hammering against her ribs like it wanted out. But she thought about Harper on that kitchen floor, and she ran straight at the door. The first guard saw her coming and almost laughed. "A kid? Out here?" He stepped forward and put up a hand. Hey, you can't be here, sweetheart. Go home." "I need to go inside," Rosie said. "My sister is hurt. I need the dangerous people." The guard looked at his partner. His partner shrugged. "Kid, this isn't a place for—" Rosie bit him. She sank her teeth into the soft part of his hand between thumb and forefinger, and when he yelped and jerked away, she dropped to the ground, crawled between his legs, and shoved through the heavy door. Inside, the world changed. A long hallway opened into a private dining room, a round table, 8 men in expensive suits, crystal glasses, low voices, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling. And at the head of the table, in a charcoal suit with a silver tie, sat a man with pale blonde hair and eyes the color of January ice. Vincent, the ghost, Malone. Every man in that room was a killer. That wasn't an exaggeration. It wasn't a figure of speech. Leo Caruso, to Vincent's right, had 17 confirmed bodies. Dante Marchetti, across the table, ran the ports. Jimmy Byrne controlled the unions. These men decided who lived and who died in Detroit, and they did it over steak dinners every Tuesday night at this table. Rosie ran straight through the middle of them. Leo jumped up. Jimmy reached for his waistband. Dante's chair screeched backward. The guard from outside was 2 steps behind, hand bleeding, face red with embarrassment. "Boss, I'm sorry, she just—" But Rosie was already at the head of the table. She grabbed the sleeve of Vincent Malone's jacket. Her fingers, small, cold, smeared with Harper's blood, left red streaks across $12,000 worth of Italian fabric. And she looked up at him with those eyes. "They're hurting my sister," she said. Her voice cracked on every word. Tears and snot ran down her face. Her whole body shook. "She's dying. She's all I have. Please, please save her." The room went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when something impossible occurs, and every person present knows they're witnessing it. 8 of the most dangerous men in the Midwest stared at a barefoot child in a torn nightgown, and not one of them moved. They were watching Vincent. Because Vincent hadn't moved either. He sat perfectly still, his eyes locked on the little girl's face, on her blonde curls, matted and wild, on her blue eyes, enormous with terror, on her bare feet, red and raw from the frozen pavement. And something happened that no one in that room had ever seen before. Vincent Malone's hand trembled. It was slight, barely visible, but Leo saw it, and Leo had been at Vincent's side for 11 years through wars, betrayals, and bloodshed, and he had never, not once, seen the ghost's hands shake. "What's your name?" Vincent's voice was low, controlled, but different. Something underneath it had shifted, like ice cracking on a river. "Rosie." "Rosie what?" "Rosie Dawson. My sister is Harper. Liv. I call her Liv." The words tumbled out between sobs. A bad man came to our house. He's hitting her. There's blood everywhere. She told me to run and find help. I didn't know where to go. Someone said dangerous people come here, and I thought dangerous means strong, and strong means you can help her. Vincent stared at this child, 6 years old, the same age Emma was when she first started calling him Vinny instead of Vincent. The same blonde curls, the same blue eyes that trusted the world even when the world didn't deserve it. 12 years. For 12 years, he'd kept everything locked in a vault inside his chest. He'd sealed it with concrete and iron the night they put Emma in the ground. He'd told himself he would never open that vault again. Love was weakness. Caring was a weapon others used against you. His own father had proved that. But this girl, this impossible, barefoot, shivering girl who bit a guard and charged into a room full of killers because her sister was in danger. She wasn't knocking on the vault. She was blowing it open. Vincent stood up. Every man at the table tensed. Leo's hand went to his gun. Reflex, not intent. They'd never seen Vincent react to anything this way. He was the ghost. He gave orders. He calculated. He never, ever moved with emotion. He dropped to one knee. Eye level with Rosie. His voice was so soft that only she could hear it. Rosie, look at me. Where do you live? East Side. The building on Garfield with the broken buzzer. Apartment 3B, 3rd floor. She grabbed his hand with both of hers. Please hurry, please. She was on the floor and there was so much blood, and she told me to run. But I don't want to run. I want to go back. I want my sister. Vincent took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her. It swallowed her whole, dragging on the ground like a blanket. Then he did something that made Leo's jaw physically drop. He picked her up. He lifted Rosie Dawson off the ground, settled her against his chest, and held her there. Her small arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried into his shoulder. And for the first time in 12 years, Vincent Malone held a child. His eyes were closed. Just for a second. Just long enough for something to pass across his face that no one could name. Then they opened, and the ghost was back. But different, sharper, colder. Not cold toward the girl, cold toward whatever was waiting at the other end of this night. Leo, 5 cars, now, full security detail. Leo didn't hesitate. On it. Dante, get Dr. Abrams on the phone. Tell him to have a trauma team ready at St. Michael's in 20 minutes. Dante was already dialing. Jimmy, I want everything you can find on a man named... He looked down at Rosie. The bad man who hurt your sister. Do you know his name? Brandon, Rosie whispered. His name is Brandon. Liv told him to go away. He didn't listen. He never listens. Brandon Cole, Vincent said to Jimmy. Everything. By the time I get to the hospital, address, associates, criminal record, who he works for, what he ate for breakfast, everything. Jimmy nodded and left the table. Vincent looked at the remaining men. His voice dropped to a frequency that made the air in the room feel heavier. If this child's sister dies tonight because we were too slow, I will personally hold every man in this room responsible. Move. The room emptied in seconds. 5 black SUVs tore out of the garage beneath the iron chandelier. Vincent sat in the back of the lead car with Rosie on his lap. She was still crying, but quieter now. Her hand gripped the lapel of his shirt, twisting the fabric like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the world. Is Liv going to be okay? She asked. Vincent looked down at her, and in the dim glow of passing streetlights, he said something he hadn't said to anyone in 12 years. Something he'd stopped believing the night Emma died. I promise. Leo glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met. Leo said nothing, but his expression said everything. You don't make promises. You never make promises. What is happening right now? The SUV caravan screamed through Eastside Detroit. 20 minutes of road covered in 7. Red lights ignored, stop signs blown through. The 5 vehicles moved like a single black snake cutting through the frozen streets. Vincent held Rosie the entire ride. Her heartbeat, fast, irregular, too fast for a child, pulsed against his chest. And with each beat, he felt something he thought he'd killed a long time ago. Purpose. Not the cold purpose of running an empire, not the mechanical purpose of collecting debts and eliminating enemies. Something older, something he'd felt when he used to drive Emma to school every morning and she'd sing off-key to the radio and he'd pretend to hate it. The purpose of protecting someone who can't protect themselves. They hit Garfield Avenue at 10:23. The building was a 4-story brick box with a fire escape that looked like it would collapse if you breathed on it. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. Leo went first, gun drawn, 2 men behind him. Vincent followed with Rosie still in his arms. The apartment door hung open. One hinge snapped. Shoe prints in the hallway. Men's boots, size 11 or 12, moving fast. The scuff marks told the story. Someone had left in a hurry. Brandon was gone. But Harper wasn't. She was on the kitchen floor, face down, a pool of blood spreading from underneath her cheek. Her left arm bent at an angle that made Leo wince. And Leo had seen things that would break most men. Her hair was matted with blood. Her face, the side they could see, was swollen beyond recognition. Purple, red, split skin across the cheekbone. One eye completely shut. For one terrible second, Vincent thought she was dead. Then her chest moved, just barely. A shallow, ragged breath that sounded like paper tearing. "Liv!" Rosie screamed. She thrashed in Vincent's arms, reaching for her sister. "Liv! Wake up! I brought help! I brought the dangerous people!" Vincent set Rosie down gently. She scrambled to her sister's side and pressed her face against Harper's shoulder. "I'm here, Liv. I'm here. Wake up, please wake up." Harper's one good eye opened, slowly, like she was swimming up from the bottom of a dark ocean. She blinked once, twice, tried to focus. Her gaze found Rosie's face first, always Rosie's face first. "Are you okay?" Harper's voice was a whisper, broken, gurgling slightly from the blood in her mouth. "Did he hurt you?" Vincent stood over them, and something inside his chest caved in. Beaten half to death on a kitchen floor, bones broken, face destroyed, and her first words, her very first words, were asking if her sister was okay. He thought of Emma, 14 years old, shielding their mother with her own body, dying with her brother's angel wing necklace clutched in her hand. He thought of Harper, 28 years old, standing between a violent man and a 6-year-old, taking every blow so her sister wouldn't have to. The same love, the same sacrifice. 12 years and 1,000 miles apart, and the story was exactly the same. Vincent knelt beside Harper. She flinched, hard. Her body contracted away from him, and he understood immediately. She didn't know him. All she saw was another man, another threat. "My name is Vincent," he said quietly. "Your sister found me. She asked me to help. I'm going to pick you up now and take you to a hospital. I need you to trust me for the next 10 minutes. Can you do that?" Harper looked at Rosie. Rosie nodded, tears streaming. "He's okay, Liv. He gave me his coat. He promised." Harper's eye moved to Vincent. She studied him through the blur and the blood and the pain. Whatever she saw there, maybe it was the way he'd held Rosie. Maybe it was the coat that swallowed her sister whole. Maybe it was something she couldn't explain. She nodded. Vincent lifted her off the floor. She weighed nothing. Bones and skin and stubborn will. And that was all. She made a sound when he moved her. A sharp, involuntary cry that she bit off immediately. Because even now, even broken, she didn't want Rosie to hear her in pain. "It's okay," Vincent said. He carried her down the stairs like she was made of glass. Rosie held his jacket closed around herself and followed, one hand gripping the back of his shirt. "You're safe now, both of you." Leo had the SUV door open. Vincent laid Harper across the back seat. Rosie climbed in and positioned herself so Harper's head rested in her lap. The 6-year-old girl stroked her sister's blood-matted hair and whispered, "You're gonna be okay, Liv. The dangerous people are helping us." Vincent closed the door. He stood in the cold for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned to Leo. "Find Brandon Cole, tonight, before sunrise. I don't care what it takes." Leo nodded. He'd seen that look in Vincent's eyes only once before, 12 years ago, the night they found Emma. The convoy split. 3 SUVs headed for St. Michael's Hospital. 2 disappeared into the Detroit night, hunting. And in the back of the lead car, a little girl with bare feet and a broken heart held her sister's head in her lap and sang softly. The same song Harper always sang to her at bedtime, off-key, wrong words in half the places. But she sang it anyway, because that's what you do when someone you love is hurting. You hold them, you sing, and you don't let go. Vincent sat in the front seat, hands gripped on his knees, jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. He stared straight ahead at the road, and he did not let himself look back. Because if he looked back, if he saw that little girl singing to her broken sister, the last wall inside him would come down. And he wasn't ready. Not yet. Not until he'd finished what this night had started. The ghost had work to do. St. Michael's was quiet at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The kind of quiet that only private hospitals can afford. No overcrowded waiting rooms, no screaming ambulance sirens, no drunk college kids bleeding in the hallway. Vincent owned 60% of this building. The other 40 belonged to a shell corporation that also belonged to Vincent. When his cars pulled up to the private entrance, Dr. Abrams and a 4-person trauma team were already waiting with a gurney. Harper was unconscious by the time they carried her inside. She'd held on for the entire ride, eyes open, one hand gripping Rosie's fingers, and then, the moment the SUV stopped and she knew they'd arrived somewhere safe, her body surrendered. Her eye rolled back. Her hand went limp. She dropped into the dark like someone had cut her strings. "Liv! Liv!" Rosie screamed and tried to climb onto the gurney as they wheeled Harper through the double doors. A nurse reached for her, and Rosie kicked. "Don't touch me, I want my sister." Vincent caught her. He scooped her up mid-kick and held her firm against his chest. She fought him, fists pounding his shoulder, legs thrashing, and he let her. He didn't pin her arms. He didn't tell her to calm down. He just held on and let her rage. Because he understood something that most people didn't. Sometimes a child needs to fight before they can fall apart. 30 seconds. That's how long it took. Then Rosie collapsed against him, sobbing so hard her whole body convulsed. "She's going to die," Rosie choked out. "Everybody dies. My mommy died. Liv is going to die too." "No." Vincent said it with a certainty he had no right to feel. "She's not going to die, Rosie. I won't let that happen." "You can't promise that. You don't know." "I know that your sister survived a man twice her size tonight. I know she stayed standing so you could run. Somebody that strong doesn't quit. Not now." Rosie pulled back and looked at his face. Her eyes were swollen, bloodshot, ancient in a way that no 6-year-old's eyes should ever be. "How do you know?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Because I knew someone like her once." He carried Rosie to a private waiting room on the 4th floor. Leather chairs, warm lighting, a television mounted on the wall playing cartoons that nobody watched. A nurse brought hot chocolate and a blanket, and Rosie sat on Vincent's lap, wrapped in his suit jacket like a cocoon, sipping from a mug that required both her hands to hold. And then she started talking. Not because anyone asked, because she was 6, and she was terrified, and talking was the only way she knew how to keep the fear from swallowing her whole. "Liv works 3 jobs," Rosie said. "She gets up before the sun. She makes coffee for grumpy people. Then she sells flowers. Then she cleans offices at night. She's always tired. She tries to hide it, but I can tell because her eyes get the dark circles, and she puts makeup on them, but I can still see." Vincent said nothing. He listened. She never buys anything for herself. She wears the same shoes until they get holes, and then she puts cardboard inside. But she bought me these. Rosie kicked her bare feet. Somewhere between the apartment and the car, she'd lost any sense of cold. Light-up shoes, pink. They flash when I walk. She saved up for 2 months. I saw her counting coins on the kitchen table when she thought I was sleeping. She sounds like a good sister. She's the best sister. She's the best person in the whole world. Rosie's lip trembled. She says I'm her reason for everything. She says before me, she didn't have a reason. Vincent closed his eyes. He could hear Emma's voice in his head. 13 years old, sitting on his bed while he cleaned a gun he told her was a toy, saying, "Vinny, why are you always so serious? You need a reason to smile. I'll be your reason." Rosie. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Tell me about Brandon." The child's body went rigid in his arms. Just like that, a switch flipped, and the little girl who'd been sipping hot chocolate and kicking her feet became something small and hard and closed. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She went completely still, and that stillness was worse than any scream. "He was nice at first," Rosie said quietly. "He brought me ice cream. He called me princess. He told Liv she was beautiful, and she smiled, and I liked him because she never smiled like that before." "When did he stop being nice?" "I don't know. It wasn't one day. It was like when you put a frog in water and make it hot real slow. Liv told me that story once. She said that's how bad things happen. So slow you don't notice until it's boiling." Vincent felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, something past anger. Something that lived in the space where fury burns so hot it becomes calm. "He started checking her phone," Rosie continued. "Then he didn't want her to see her friends. Then he yelled if dinner was late. Then he yelled if dinner was early. Then he yelled about everything. And then one night I woke up, and Liv was in the bathroom, and there was blood in the sink, and she said she walked into a door, and I'm 6, but I'm not stupid." "No, you're not stupid at all. She kicked him out 3 months ago. She changed the locks. She changed her phone number. She told Mr. Kim at the corner store not to tell Brandon anything. And it was good. It was really good for a while." Rosie's hands tightened around the mug. "Then he started showing up again, outside the apartment, outside my school, just standing there, watching. He never came close enough for Liv to call anyone. He just watched. And tonight? Tonight I was in bed and I heard the door break. He was screaming her name. Then he saw me and he said..." Rosie stopped. Her bottom lip disappeared between her teeth. She bit down until it turned white. "What did he say, Rosie?" "He said, 'Where's your sister, you little burden? You're the reason she can't be with me. You and your broken heart and your hospital bills. If it wasn't for you, she'd come back to me.'" The mug in Rosie's hands trembled. Hot chocolate sloshed over the rim and dripped onto Vincent's shirt. He didn't move. "Am I a burden?" Rosie whispered. "Look at me." Vincent tilted her chin up with one finger. "You are not a burden. You are the reason your sister gets up every morning. You are the reason she works 3 jobs and wears shoes with cardboard in them and counts coins on the kitchen table. Not because you're a weight, because you're her purpose. Do you understand the difference?" Rosie nodded slowly. "She says that too." "Then believe it, because I've known your sister for 45 minutes, and I can already tell you, she wouldn't trade a single day with you for anything in this world." Dr. Abrams appeared in the doorway. White coat, reading glasses, the kind of face that delivered bad news for a living and had learned to keep it neutral. "Mr. Malone, can I speak with you?" Vincent set Rosie down in the chair, tucked the blanket around her, and stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him, and his face changed. The warmth drained out like someone had pulled a plug. In its place, something clinical. Cold. The ghost. "How bad?" "She's stable. 2 fractured ribs, left side. Clean break on the right wrist. She'll need a cast. Severe contusions across the face and torso. Her left orbital bone is cracked, not displaced, so she won't need surgery for that, but the swelling is significant. Mild concussion. Some internal bruising on the liver, but no active bleeding. She'll survive. She'll survive. She's going to be in considerable pain for weeks, and the facial injuries will take time, but yes, she'll pull through. Abrams paused. He took off his glasses and cleaned them, which was something he did when the hard part was coming. There's something else. The little girl. Vincent's stomach dropped. What about her? When the nurse was checking her over, she noticed an irregular heartbeat. I ran an ECG. Mr. Malone, that child has a severe congenital heart defect, ventricular septal disorder with complications. She needs open heart surgery, and she needs it soon. Without it, he put his glasses back on. Without it, she has maybe 6 months, a year at the outside, and the deterioration at the end will be rapid. How much? $85,000 minimum, likely more with post-operative care. And the surgical team she needs has a wait list. She'd have to put down a deposit of $15,000 within 30 days to hold her spot. Vincent stared at the wall past Abrams's shoulder. $85,000. He'd spent more than that on the watch on his wrist. He'd spent more than that on a single dinner in Milan. He'd watched men gamble twice that amount on a hand of poker and laugh about it. And somewhere inside that room, a 28-year-old woman with a broken face and 2 fractured ribs had saved $13,000 over 3 years, working 3 jobs to try to keep her sister alive. Schedule the surgery, Vincent said. Abrams blinked. The deposit alone is, I'll cover it, all of it. Schedule the surgery, get her on the list, and make it happen within 2 weeks, whatever it costs. Abrams opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. In 12 years of working for Vincent Malone, he had never, not once, seen the man spend $1 on anyone who wasn't already in his organization. Yes, sir. Vincent walked back into the waiting room. Rosie had fallen asleep in the chair, curled into a ball under the blanket, her thumb in her mouth and tear tracks still wet on her cheeks. He stood over her for a long moment, just watching her breathe. Then his phone buzzed. Leo. Talk to me. Brandon Cole, 30 years old, petty criminal, mostly enforcement work. Here's where it gets interesting, boss. He's Iron Wolves. Joined up about 8 months ago, right around the time he and the girl split. His handler is Fang himself. Vincent's hand tightened around the phone. Marcus Fang Delano. He knew the name. Everyone in Detroit knew the name. The Iron Wolves ran East Side like their personal piggy bank. Protection money from every shop, every restaurant, every family scraping by. Fang was a predator who specialized in finding people who couldn't fight back. There's more, Leo said, and his voice had that edge it got when he was angry, which almost never happened. I pulled financial records. Harper Dawson owes the Iron Wolves $2,600 in back protection money. But that's not the play, boss. That was never the play. Tell me. Fang knew about the kid's heart condition. He's known for months. The whole setup with Brandon, approaching Harper at the coffee shop, the nice guy act, all of it. That was Fang's operation from the start. The plan was simple. Brandon gets close to Harper, isolates her, cuts off her support network. When she's broken enough, Fang offers to loan her the money for the kid's surgery. Predatory lending, 400% interest, compounding weekly. When she can't pay, and she could never pay, Fang owns her. Silence on the line, the kind of silence that precedes an earthquake. Owns her how? Vincent's voice was barely audible. How do you think? Leo paused. He's done it before. At least 4 other women in East Side. Same playbook. Find someone desperate. Manufacture the desperation if you have to. Offer the rope and let them hang themselves. Fang is trafficking, boss. He's been running women on East Side for 2 years under everyone's nose. Vincent sat down. Not because he was tired, because for 1 second, just one, the rage hit him so hard that his vision whited out. He gripped the arm of the chair and breathed through his nose and waited for the world to come back into focus. When it did, the ghost was the only thing left. Where's Brandon now? We're tracking him. He ditched his car on Gratiot. My guess is Greyhound Station. He'll try to Rabbit. Cleveland or Columbus, probably. Don't let him leave this city. Done. And Leo, I want everything on Fang's operation. Every route, every safe house, every dollar, by morning. You're going after the Iron Wolves. It wasn't a question. Fang built a machine that chews up people like Harper Dawson and spits them out as property. He targeted a woman who works 3 jobs to save her dying sister. He sent a man to beat her in front of a 6-year-old child. Vincent looked at Rosie, asleep in the chair. Her small chest rose and fell with each breath. Each irregular, struggling, borrowed breath. That machine stops running. Tonight. Boss, Leo's voice dropped. This is a war. Fang's got 40, 50 soldiers on East Side. Supply lines, weapons, money. We hit him. It's not just a fight. It's a campaign. Then it's a campaign. Can I ask you something, off the record? Go ahead. Why? We've known about the Iron Wolves for years. We've let them operate because East Side wasn't worth the cost of taking it. What changed? Vincent was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Leo checked his phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. 12 years ago, Vincent finally said, a 14-year-old girl died because someone decided she wasn't worth fighting for. Because my father looked at the situation and calculated that the cost of saving his own wife and daughter was too high. He made a business decision, and I buried my sister. Leo said nothing. Tonight, a 6-year-old girl ran 8 blocks barefoot in 20-degree weather because she decided her sister was worth fighting for. She didn't calculate the cost. She didn't weigh the risks. She just ran. Vincent's voice hardened into something that could cut steel. I'm done calculating, Leo. Some things aren't about cost. They're about what kind of man you choose to be. The call ended. Vincent pocketed his phone and sat in the silence of the waiting room with a sleeping child who didn't know that her broken heart had just started a war. 2 hours later, Harper woke up. The morphine had taken the edge off, but her body was a landscape of pain. Every breath reminded her of the ribs. Every micro movement of her hand screamed through the wrist, and her face felt like it belonged to someone else. She opened her right eye. The left was swollen shut and wouldn't cooperate, and saw a ceiling she didn't recognize. White. Clean. Private room. Flowers on the nightstand. A heart monitor beeping steady. An IV drip running into her arm. And Rosie, asleep in a chair beside the bed, wrapped in a man's suit jacket that was worth more than everything Harper had ever owned combined. Harper tried to sit up and nearly blacked out from the pain. She gritted her teeth, grabbed the bed rail, and pulled herself upright because lying flat, while her sister slept in a stranger's jacket in a place she didn't recognize, was not an option. Don't do that. The voice came from the corner. She turned her head, slowly, because fast movement made the room spin, and saw him. The man from the apartment. Sitting in a chair by the window, legs crossed, watching her with pale blue eyes that gave away absolutely nothing. Where am I? Her voice sounded like someone had dragged it across gravel. St. Michael's Hospital, private room. Your injuries are serious but not life-threatening. Your sister is fine. She hasn't left that chair since they brought you in. Harper's eye moved to Rosie, confirmed, breathing, safe. The knot in her chest loosened by 1 degree. Who are you? My name is Vincent Malone. The name hit her like a second punch. Everyone in Detroit knew that name. You didn't have to be in the life. You didn't have to run in those circles. Vincent Malone was the kind of name that mothers whispered to scare their children. The kind of name that showed up in the free press every few months next to words like alleged and under investigation, and no charges filed. You're... Yes, Harper stared at him. The morphine made everything slightly unreal, slightly dreamlike, but the fear was concrete. What do you want? Nothing. Nobody does something for nothing. I grew up in the system. I've been through 8 foster homes. I know exactly what men who offer help for free actually want. Vincent didn't flinch. I understand why you'd believe that, and I'm not going to tell you you're wrong about the world. You're probably right more often than not. But I'm not asking for anything, Harper. Not tonight. Not ever. Then why? She was shaking now, from pain, from adrenaline, from the weight of everything pressing down on her at once. Why are you here? Why did you bring us here? Why is my sister wearing your jacket? Because your sister ran barefoot through the worst neighborhood in this city, broke into a room full of dangerous men, and asked me to save you. And I? He stopped. His jaw worked. He looked at the wall, then back at her. I couldn't say no. Why not? You don't know us. Because she reminded me of someone I lost. The room was quiet, except for the heart monitor and Rosie's soft breathing. Harper studied him, this man who terrified an entire city, sitting in a hospital chair at 2 a.m, his shirt stained with her blood and her sister's hot chocolate. Your doctor ran tests on Rosie, Vincent said. Her heart condition is deteriorating. She needs surgery within 2 weeks. $85,000. Harper's face crumbled. The one thing she'd been fighting against, the one wave she'd been trying to hold back with her bare hands, crashed over her. She pressed her good hand against her mouth and tried to swallow the sound, because Rosie was right there, and Harper had spent 6 years making sure Rosie never heard her cry. I have $13,000, she whispered through her fingers. 3 years of saving. I'll get more. I'll sell everything. I'll find another job. It's done. I'm paying for the surgery. Harper went silent. Her hand dropped from her mouth. She stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. No, I can't. I won't owe you. You don't understand what that means for someone like me. Owing someone. It means they own you. It means nothing. No debt, no favor, no strings. That doesn't exist. It does now. Why? She was almost yelling. The heart monitor spiked. Rosie stirred in her sleep but didn't wake. Tell me why. I need to understand. Nobody helps us. Nobody has ever helped us. Not the system, not the churches, not the government. I have been alone since I was 8 years old. So tell me why a man like you would spend $85,000 on a stranger's sister. Vincent leaned forward. His elbows rested on his knees. His hands, the same hands that had done terrible things to terrible people, clasped together in front of him. And when he spoke, his voice was stripped of everything. No power, no authority, no ghost. Just a man who had carried a wound for 12 years and was finally letting someone see the blood. I had a sister. Her name was Emma. She was 14. She wanted to be a doctor. She sang off-key in my car every morning, and she laughed at jokes that weren't funny. And she believed, truly believed, that there was good in everyone, even me. Harper didn't move. 12 years ago, someone took her from me. She died protecting our mother. She was 14 years old, and she threw herself in front of our mother, and they killed them both. And I could have saved them. I could have done something. But my father decided that the cost was too high, and I was too late. The heart monitor beeped. Rosie murmured something in her sleep. The world kept turning. Tonight your sister walked into a room full of killers and looked at me with the same eyes Emma had. The same courage, the same love that's bigger than fear. He paused. I couldn't save Emma, but I can save Rosie. And maybe that doesn't fix what happened 12 years ago. Maybe nothing fixes that. But I'd rather try than sit in my restaurant counting money while a child dies because her sister couldn't afford the surgery. Harper was crying. She didn't try to hide it anymore. Tears ran down her swollen, broken face, and dripped onto the hospital gown. And she let them fall because for the first time in 20 years, someone had looked at her life and said, I see it. I see all of it. And I'm choosing to help anyway. I don't know how to trust you, she said. Then don't. Trust takes time. I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for permission to help your sister. Harper looked at Rosie. That face, those curls, that impossible, stubborn, beautiful child who ran through the dark to save her, who bit a grown man's hand, who found the most dangerous person in the city and said, please. Okay, Harper whispered. Okay. Vincent stood. He buttoned his cuffs, one of them stained dark with Harper's blood, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. Your sister drew a picture while you were in surgery, 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. She said the tall one is you and the short one is her. Harper pressed her face into the pillow and sobbed. She gave it to me, Vincent said quietly. I'll keep it safe. He closed the door behind him and walked down the hallway toward the service elevator. Leo fell into step beside him, phone in hand, papers tucked under his arm. The warmth that had been in Vincent's voice 30 seconds ago was gone. In its place, ice. Brandon? Vincent asked. Greyhound Station. He bought a one-way ticket to Cleveland. Leaves at 4:15. We've got eyes on him. Don't let him board. Already handled. And Fang? Everything's ready. I found the warehouse he uses on Industrial Boulevard. He keeps a crew there every night, 8 to 10 soldiers. He thinks he's untouchable. Vincent pulled his phone from his pocket. 3:47 a.m. The hospital was tomb quiet. Somewhere behind him, a woman with a broken face was holding her sister's hand. Somewhere ahead of him, the men who did this to her were sleeping in their beds, dreaming whatever dreams men like that dream. Not for much longer. Call everyone in, Vincent said. Full deployment. Every soldier, every gun, every car. I want 40 men at that warehouse by 2 a.m. tomorrow. Leo raised an eyebrow. 40? Boss, Fang's got maybe 8, 10 guys there on any given night. 8 that we know of. I don't plan on being surprised. He stopped walking and turned to face Leo directly. This ends tomorrow night, all of it. The Iron Wolves, the protection rackets, the trafficking, every piece of Fang's operation goes dark in 24 hours. And then, Vincent reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully, like it was something precious. 2 stick figures, drawn in crayon, holding hands under a crooked rainbow. And then, he said, I keep a promise. 24 hours, that's all Vincent gave himself. 24 hours to dismantle an empire that Fang had spent 3 years building on the broken backs of Eastside Detroit. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He sat in the converted office on the 2nd floor of St. Michael's Hospital, a room that 12 hours ago held filing cabinets and outdated medical journals, and now held 3 laptops, a whiteboard covered in names and addresses, and 6 phones that hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Leo walked in at noon with a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. He dropped it on the desk and said, It's worse than we thought. Show me. 4 women confirmed, all East Side, all the same playbook. Boyfriend gets close, isolates them, breaks them down, then Fang swoops in with a loan they can never repay. Maria Gutierrez, 23, single mother, son has leukemia. She took Fang's money 18 months ago. She hasn't been seen at her apartment in 6 months. Leo flipped a page. Tanya Williams, 21. Her grandmother needed dialysis. Same story. Borrowed from Fang, couldn't pay, disappeared. The grandmother died alone in her apartment. Took the neighbors 3 days to notice the smell. Vincent's hand flattened against the desk. His fingers pressed into the wood until the tips went white. Keisha Monroe, 19, and Jessica Park, 25. Both gone. Their families filed police reports. Nothing happened. You want to know why nothing happened? Tell me. Because Fang has 2 detectives in his pocket, Simmons and Hartley, East Side Precinct. Every report gets buried. Every lead goes cold. He's been operating with a safety net this whole time. Vincent stood and walked to the window. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass and closed his eyes. 4 women, 4 lives swallowed whole by a machine designed to grind people into nothing. And Harper Dawson was supposed to be number 5. Where are they now, the women? Leo shook his head. I don't know yet, but I know who does. Fang. Fang. Vincent turned from the window. What time does he go to the warehouse? Every night, 10 o'clock. Stays until 2, 3 in the morning. Runs his operation from the back office. 8 to 10 soldiers rotating security. He thinks nobody's crazy enough to touch him on his own turf. Tonight. Tonight, Leo confirmed. Everything's in place. 42 men, full tactical. I've got 10 coming in through the east loading dock, 10 through the roof access, 15 staged behind the machinery on the main floor, and 7 in the parking lot to cut off any runners. I want it quiet. No shots unless they shoot first. I don't want a war. I want a surrender. Leo studied him. And if Fang doesn't surrender, then it won't be quiet. The afternoon crept by like something wounded. Vincent checked on Harper twice. The first time she was asleep, her battered face turned toward Rosie's chair, her broken wrist elevated on a pillow. Rosie sat cross-legged on the floor drawing pictures with crayons the nurses kept bringing her. She'd filled 11 pages. Every single one showed the same thing. 2 figures, one tall and one short, holding hands. The second time Harper was awake, she saw him in the doorway and stiffened. Not as much as before, but enough. How are you feeling? He asked. Like someone used my face as a speed bag. She said it flat, without self-pity. A statement of fact from a woman who'd learned long ago that crying about pain didn't make it stop. The doctor says I can leave in 2 days. Leave to where? Your apartment door is broken. The lock is destroyed. Brandon knows where you live. Harper's jaw tightened. He could see her running calculations. The same calculations she'd been running her entire life. Where to go? How to survive? What to sacrifice next? I'll figure it out. I always figure it out. I have a property on Woodward, 2-bedroom apartment above a bookstore. It's furnished. It's safe. I'd like you and Rosie to stay there until... No. Harper, I said no. Her voice cracked like a gunshot. Rosie looked up from her drawing. Harper softened immediately, the way she always did when Rosie was watching. Baby, keep drawing. Liv's fine. Rosie looked at Vincent, then back at Harper. Then she said, Liv, stop being mean to Uncle Vin. He's helping us. Uncle Vin. The words hit Vincent like a truck. He blinked twice, and something behind his eyes burned, and he had to look at the ceiling for a full 3 seconds before he trusted himself to speak. I'll leave the address with the nurse, he said quietly. The offer stands whenever you're ready. No strings. He left before Harper could argue. In the hallway, he pressed his back against the wall and breathed. Uncle Vin. A child he'd known for 16 hours had given him a name that meant safety, a name that meant family. The last person who'd called him anything close to that was buried in Holy Cross Cemetery with an angel wing necklace in her hand. His phone rang. Leo. We found Brandon. Vincent straightened. Where? Greyhound Station, just like I figured. He tried to buy a ticket to Cleveland at 4 this morning. My guys grabbed him in the parking lot. He's at the warehouse on Livernois, sitting in a chair, crying like a baby. Keep him there. I'll deal with him after Fang. You sure you don't want to deal with him first? Might put you in a better mood for tonight. Nothing about tonight requires me to be in a good mood, Leo. At 9:45 p.m., Vincent Malone put on a fresh suit. Black. No tie. He buttoned his jacket, checked his cuffs, and slipped Rosie's crayon drawing into his breast pocket. He didn't know why he brought it. He didn't examine the impulse. He just folded it carefully and placed it over his heart and walked out the door. 5 cars, 12 minutes to Industrial Boulevard. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by empty lots in abandoned buildings. Two rusted loading docks, one main entrance, a parking lot full of potholes where 6 cars sat in a crooked line. Fang's crew already inside. Vincent's convoy stopped 2 blocks away. He stepped out into the cold and Leo was beside him instantly. 42 men in position. East dock team, roof team, main floor team, all confirmed. Parking lot team is set. Fang's inside with 8 soldiers. He's in the back office. Tell them to hold until I give the signal. Which is? You'll know. Vincent walked to the warehouse alone, just him. Through the parking lot, past Fang's cars, up to the main door. He knocked 3 times, slow, deliberate, like a man with all the time in the world. The door opened. A man built like a refrigerator looked down at him with a gun in his waistband and confusion on his face. Who the hell? Tell Fang that Vincent Malone is here to see him. I'll wait. The man's face changed. Recognition, then fear, then forced bravado. Fang doesn't take meetings at... I'll wait, Vincent repeated. His voice hadn't changed, hadn't risen, hadn't sharpened. That was the thing about the ghost. He didn't need to raise his voice. The quieter he got, the more dangerous he became. 3 minutes. The door opened again. A different man, thinner, with a neck tattoo and nervous hands. He says, "Come in, alone." Of course. Vincent walked into the warehouse. 8 men lined the walls, guns visible, arms crossed, doing their best impression of menacing, which might have worked on shop owners and single mothers, but looked absurd in front of a man who dismantled the Moretti family with his bare hands 12 years ago. Fang sat at a metal desk at the far end. Marcus Fang Delano, 41 years old, gold chains, a diamond earring the size of a marble. He leaned back in his chair with the practiced ease of a man who believed he was untouchable. The ghost himself, Fang spread his hands wide. In my warehouse, on my turf, what brings the king of Detroit all the way to East Side? You know why I'm here. I really don't. We've been operating in our lane, Malone. East Side is mine. West Side is yours. That was the arrangement. The arrangement changed last night. Fang's smile flickered. Just a flash, there and gone. But Vincent caught it. Last night? What happened last night? A 28-year-old woman was beaten nearly to death in her apartment by one of your soldiers. Her 6-year-old sister witnessed it. The same 6-year-old who needs heart surgery that she can't afford because your organization has been bleeding her neighborhood dry for 3 years. Fang leaned forward. Brandon's personal life isn't my... Don't. The word dropped like a blade. Don't insult me. Brandon Cole was your operation. You targeted Harper Dawson because her sister's medical bills made her vulnerable. You sent Brandon in to isolate her, break her, and prepare her for a predatory loan she could never repay. When she defaulted, you planned to traffic her. The same way you trafficked Maria Gutierrez, Tanya Williams, Keisha Monroe, Jessica Park. The names landed like grenades. Each one made Fang's soldiers shift their weight. They knew those names. They knew what had happened to those women. And now they knew that someone outside their world knew too. Fang's smile was completely gone. You've been busy. I've been motivated. By what? Some girl? Some broke nobody from East Side? Come on, Malone, you and I, we're the same. We're businessmen. Sometimes the product gets damaged. That's the cost of doing business. Vincent reached into his breast pocket and pulled out the folded paper. He opened it slowly and held it up. 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked rainbow. A 6-year-old girl drew this. The same girl who ran 8 blocks barefoot through your territory in 20-degree weather to find someone who could save her sister. She ran past your dealers, past your lookouts, past the men you've stationed on every corner to squeeze money from people who have nothing. And she didn't stop. She didn't hide. She ran straight into a room full of killers and asked for help. He set the drawing on Fang's desk. That's courage, real courage, the kind that doesn't need a gun or a crew or a gold chain, the kind that comes from love so big it makes a 6-year-old forget she's afraid. Vincent's eyes locked on Fang's. And you're a man who preys on women and children. You're not a businessman, Fang. You're a parasite. Fang's hand moved under the desk, toward a drawer, toward whatever was in that drawer. Don't do that, Vincent said. You walked in here alone, Malone. You're in my house, with my men, 8 against 1. You want to tell me what leverage you think you have? Vincent snapped his fingers. The sound was small, a dry click that echoed once off the metal walls and died. But what followed filled the warehouse like a flood. Industrial lights slammed on, banks of them, mounted on the ceiling, on the catwalks, on the loading dock beams. White light poured into every shadow, every corner, every hiding spot. And from those shadows, men stepped forward, behind the rusted machinery on the main floor, along the catwalks above, through the east loading dock, moving in a silent line, down from the roof access, rappelling on cables with weapons drawn. 42 men, armed, positioned, every angle covered, every exit blocked. Fang's 8 soldiers had their guns out in a heartbeat, but it took them less than a second to understand the math. 8 against 42. They were surrounded on every side, from every elevation, with nowhere to run and nothing to negotiate with. Guns down, one of Fang's men shouted, and it took a moment for the others to realize he was talking to his own crew. Put them down! Put them down, now! One by one, like dominoes, Fang's soldiers dropped their weapons, hands behind their heads, knees on the concrete floor. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds, and not a single shot was fired. Fang sat alone at his desk. His hand had frozen halfway to the drawer. His gold chains caught the industrial light and threw tiny sparks across his face, which had gone the color of old cement. You brought an army, Fang said. His voice was different now. The swagger was gone, evaporated like steam, and underneath it was something that Vincent recognized because he'd heard it 1,000 times before. Raw, unfiltered fear. I brought a message. Vincent placed both hands on the desk and leaned forward until his face was 18 inches from Fang's. 4 demands. You will agree to all of them. You will not negotiate. You will not bargain. You will say yes, and then you will disappear. Fang swallowed. What demands? 1. The Iron Wolves leave Eastside tonight. Every soldier, every lookout, every dealer. Gone before sunrise. That's my territory. I built it from. 2. Vincent didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every dollar of protection money you've collected in the past 2 years gets returned. Every family, every shop, every person you've squeezed. Leo has the records. He knows who paid what. Every cent goes back. That's hundreds of thousands of. 3. You turn over Brandon Cole's full file. Every communication, every order you gave him, every detail of the operation targeting Harper Dawson. This goes to the police. Not your police, mine. Fang's breathing had gone shallow. His chest rose and fell in quick, desperate hitches. You're asking me to hand you evidence that. 4. Vincent straightened up. You kneel on this floor and you apologize. Not to me, not to my men. You apologize to every person you've destroyed. And then you leave Detroit. Tonight. Permanently. You don't come back. You don't call. You don't send anyone in your place. You vanish. And if I ever hear your name again, if it even shows up as a rumor, I'll remind you why they call me the ghost. The warehouse was silent. 42 men, 8 kneeling soldiers. 1 man at a desk with gold chains and a diamond earring, and absolutely no cards left to play. You're bluffing, Fang whispered, but his eyes said he knew better. I erased the Moretti family in 6 months, Vincent said. Every brother, every cousin, every associate. They had 200 men, safe houses in 4 states, and connections in the FBI. And I took them apart piece by piece because they made the mistake of hurting someone I loved. He tapped Rosie's drawing with one finger. You hurt someone she loves. Tell me, Fang, do you think I'm bluffing? Fang's eyes moved across the warehouse, counting guns, counting men, calculating the same odds over and over, and arriving at the same answer every time. 0. His odds were 0. His legs shook when he stood. They shook harder when he lowered himself to his knees. The concrete was cold and filthy with oil stains, and his designer pants soaked through instantly. His hands hung at his sides, limp. I'm sorry, Fang said. The words came out cracked and hollow. Not to me. Fang closed his eyes. I'm sorry, to all of them, to Maria, to Tanya, to Keisha, to Jessica, to Harper, to the kid. Tears ran down his cheeks, but Vincent felt nothing. These weren't tears of remorse. These were the tears of a man who'd been caught, and there was a difference as wide as the ocean between the two. Get up, get in your car, drive until Detroit is a dot in your rearview mirror, and pray I never think about you again. Fang stood on weak legs. He didn't look at his kneeling soldiers. He didn't grab his phone or his keys from the desk. He walked through the warehouse like a sleepwalker, past 42 armed men who parted for him like water, and out the loading dock door into the night. Leo appeared at Vincent's side. He'll run. That's the point. He might regroup, find new territory, start over somewhere else. I've already contacted Chicago, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. He shows up in any of those cities, he'll get the same welcome. Fang is done. Leo nodded. Then he glanced at the kneeling soldiers. What about them? Vincent looked at the 8 men on the concrete floor, young, most of them, 20, 25 years old. Street soldiers, expendable. The kind of men that organizations like Fang's chewed through and spit out the same way they chewed through women like Harper. Give them a choice, Vincent said. Walk away from this life tonight and nothing happens. They go home. They find real jobs. They start over. He paused. Or they don't walk away and we have a different conversation. All 8 walked away. By 3 a.m., the warehouse was empty. Leo's crew was already dispersing, half to begin the process of returning the protection money, half to secure the rest of Fang's properties and ensure every Iron Wolf soldier had left the neighborhood. Vincent stood alone in the middle of the empty building, his hands in his pockets, Rosie's drawing back in his breast pocket. His phone buzzed. Leo again. Brandon's waiting. The second warehouse was on Livernois, smaller, quieter. Just Leo, 2 of Vincent's men, and Brandon Cole, sitting in a metal chair bolted to the concrete floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, face streaked with tears and snot. He'd been crying for hours. The bravado he'd worn like Harper's door when he kicked down Harper's door was gone. Without a bottle in his over, Brandon Cole was exactly what he'd always been, a small, broken man who made himself feel big by hurting people who couldn't fight back. Please, Brandon said when Vincent walked in, I didn't mean to hurt her. I love her. I just lost control. It won't happen again. I swear to God, it won't. How many times? Vincent pulled a chair from the wall and sat down across from him, close enough to see the burst blood vessels in Brandon's eyes, close enough to smell the bourbon still seeping from his pores. How many times did you say that to her? After the first time you hit her? After the second? The 5th? How many times did you promise it would never happen again? Brandon's mouth opened, closed, no sound. She has 2 fractured ribs, a broken wrist, a cracked orbital bone, contusions across 70% of her body. Her face is so swollen that if her own sister hadn't been in the room, the doctors wouldn't have known what she looked like. I didn't mean. A 6-year-old watched you do it. A 6-year-old with a broken heart, literally a broken heart, stood in a corner and watched you beat her sister until she couldn't stand. And then that 6-year-old ran alone through the streets at night because she was more of a human being at 6 years old than you have ever been in 30 years. Brandon was sobbing now, ugly, convulsive sobs that shook the chair. I love her. I love Harper. You don't understand. Love? Vincent stood. The chair scraped against concrete. You think love is checking someone's phone? Isolating them from friends? Showing up at their apartment after they've told you to leave? Beating them in front of a child? She made me. Vincent's open palm cracked across Brandon's face. Not a punch, a slap. The kind of deliberate, humiliating slap that hurt the pride more than the flesh. Brandon's head snapped sideways. Blood sprayed from a split lip. She didn't make you do anything. She told you no. She changed her locks. She changed her number. She did everything a person can do to say, I don't want you. And you decided that her no wasn't good enough, that your feelings mattered more than her safety, that you had a right to her. Vincent grabbed Brandon's chin and forced his face forward. Look at me. She is not a possession. She is a human being. She has the right to say no. She has the right to leave. She has the right to live without fear. And you took all of that from her. Are you going to kill me? Brandon's voice was a thread, thin, ready to snap. The room held its breath. Leo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. The two soldiers flanked the door, stone-faced. Everyone in this room expects me to, Vincent said. 6 months ago, I would have. I would have put you in the ground without a second thought and slept fine that night. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the drawing, unfolded it, held it in front of Brandon's face. You see this? 2 people holding hands under a rainbow. A 6-year-old drew this while her sister was in surgery. She drew it with crayons a nurse gave her in a hospital waiting room at midnight because her whole world had just been shattered, and drawing was the only way she could keep herself from falling apart. Brandon stared at the drawing through his tears. I'm not going to kill you, Brandon. Death is easy. Death is quick. You close your eyes and it's over, and you never have to think about what you've done. Vincent folded the drawing and put it away. You're going to prison. 15 years, maybe 20, and every single morning you're going to wake up and remember this night. You're going to remember what you did to that woman. You're going to remember the sound of a 6-year-old screaming while you beat her sister. And you're going to live with that for a very, very long time. He turned to Leo. Call Morrison. Detective James Morrison, one of the few clean cops in Detroit, and one of the very few who owed Vincent a favor he'd never been asked to repay. Until now. Tell him I have a domestic violence case with full evidence, hospital records from St. Michael's, photographs, witness testimony from the neighbor, and a confession that I'm fairly confident Mr. Cole will be providing to the police voluntarily. Vincent looked at Brandon. Won't you? Brandon's head dropped to his chest. His whole body sagged in the chair like the bones had been pulled out of him. Yes. Good, because if you don't, if you recant, if you hire a lawyer and try to wriggle out of this, if you so much as speak Harper's name in any context other than admitting what you did to her, I'll withdraw my preference for the legal system, and we'll have a very different conversation, one that won't involve lawyers. Vincent walked to the door. He stopped, didn't turn around. One more thing, Brandon. When you're sitting in your cell and it's 3 a.m, and you can't sleep because the walls are too close and the silence is too loud, I want you to think about Rosie. Think about a little girl who ran barefoot through the cold to save someone she loved. Think about what it means to love somebody so much that fear doesn't matter. And then think about what you did. Think about the difference. He walked out. The door closed. Brandon Cole's sobs echoed off the concrete walls and followed him into the night. In the car, Leo drove in silence for 3 blocks before speaking. Morrison will take the case? Morrison's been waiting for something clean, something that puts a real predator away with real evidence. Brandon's case is airtight. Medical records, photographs, a cooperating witness, and a full confession. Any prosecutor in Wayne County would salivate over this. And Simmons and Hartley? Fang's cops? Anonymous tip to Internal Affairs. Full documentation of every case they buried. Let the system eat its own. Leo nodded. They drove through the empty streets of East Side Detroit, and for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter, like something heavy had been lifted off its chest. Vincent stared out the window. His reflection stared back. Pale blonde hair, ice blue eyes, a face that had been called handsome and terrifying in the same sentence. The ghost, the man who made people disappear. But tonight, he hadn't made anyone disappear. He'd brought people back. He dragged the truth into the light and forced it to stand there and be seen. He pulled out his phone and dialed Dr. Abrams. The surgery, how soon can you schedule it? I've already contacted the surgical team. They can do it in 12 days. I'll need Rosie admitted 2 days prior for preoperative prep. Do it. Mr. Malone, I should tell you, this is a complex procedure. There are risks. Her heart is significantly compromised. The success rate for this specific defect at her stage of deterioration is approximately 82%. 82%, which is very good, but not a guarantee. Vincent closed his eyes. 82%. 18% chance that a little girl who ran 8 blocks barefoot through the dark would never run again. 18% chance that the bravest person he'd ever met wouldn't make it off the operating table. Schedule it, he said. And Dr. Abrams, find the best cardiac surgeon in the country. I don't care where they are. I don't care what it costs. Fly them to Detroit. That could add significantly to, I didn't ask about cost. I asked about the best. He hung up. Leo glanced at him. You're keeping score, aren't you? Leo said quietly. What do you mean? Emma was 18%. That's what the doctors said, remember? 18% chance she'd survive if they got to her in time. Except nobody got to her in time because your father decided the Moretti ransom was a negotiating tactic. Vincent said nothing for a long time. The city moved past them in streaks of yellow light and dark shadow. 18% killed my sister, Vincent finally said. I'll be damned if it kills hers. The apartment on Woodward was everything Harper's old place wasn't. Clean walls, working heat, a kitchen with a stove that didn't require 3 matches and a prayer, 2 bedrooms, actual bedrooms with doors that closed and locks that worked. Rosie's room had a window that faced east, and the morning sun came through it like warm honey. Harper hated it. She hated it because she hadn't earned it. She hated it because every square foot reminded her that she was living inside someone else's generosity, and generosity had always come with a price tag she couldn't see until it was too late. She hated it because the sheets smelled like lavender, and the refrigerator was full, and there was a bookshelf with actual books, and for the first time in her life, she was comfortable, and comfort terrified her more than Brandon ever had. She stood in the living room on her first morning there, arm in a cast, face still swollen, ribs wrapped so tight she could barely breathe, and she cried. Not because she was sad, because she didn't know what to do with kindness. She'd never learned. Nobody had ever taught her. Rosie found her like that. The little girl padded out of her bedroom in the new pajamas a nurse had bought her, saw her sister crying in the living room, and walked over without a word. She took Harper's good hand and held it. Didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't say it would be okay. Just held on. I don't understand any of this, Harper whispered. Uncle Vin is nice, Rosie said simply. Some people are just nice, Liv. Nobody is just nice, baby. I am. You are. So maybe he is too. Harper looked down at her sister and felt something crack open inside her chest that had nothing to do with the broken ribs. Rosie was 6. She'd seen her mother die. She'd watched her sister get beaten. She had a heart that was literally falling apart. And somehow, impossibly, she still believed people could be good. Harper pulled Rosie against her and held her so tight that her ribs screamed, and she didn't care. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart, Liv. You just don't listen." Harper laughed. It hurt. She laughed anyway. Vincent came by that afternoon. He knocked first, 3 measured raps, then waited. He didn't use a key, even though it was his building. He waited until Harper opened the door, and he didn't step inside until she moved aside to let him in. Small things, but Harper noticed. She noticed everything. 20 years of survival had trained her to read people the way sailors read weather, watching for shifts, for pressure changes, for the moment the sky turned dark. "The surgery is scheduled for 11 days from now," Vincent said. He sat on the edge of an armchair like he was ready to leave at any moment, giving her the power to end the conversation whenever she wanted. "Dr. Abrams is coordinating with a cardiac surgeon from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Patricia Reeves. She's the best in the country for this specific procedure." Harper stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, one in a cast, one holding the cast. Her default position. The fortress. "How much is that costing you? Flying a surgeon from Baltimore? That's not something you need to worry about." "It's exactly something I need to worry about. Because one day the bill comes, Vincent. It always comes. And when it does, I need to know what I'm looking at." Vincent met her eyes. "There is no bill." "Then what do you get out of this?" "I get to sleep at night." Harper studied him for a long time. Her one good eye, the left was still healing, purple fading to yellow around the edges, searched his face for the lie, the angle, the trap. She was an expert at finding traps. She'd walked into so many of them that she could smell the metal before it closed. She couldn't find it, and that scared her more than finding it would have. "Rosie calls you Uncle Vin," she said. "I know. I didn't tell her to do that." "I know. She doesn't give that to people easily. She's careful. More careful than a 6-year-old should have to be. She watches people before she trusts them. She's been watching you since the hospital." "And what did she decide?" "She decided you're safe." Harper's voice caught. "She's never decided that about anyone except me." Vincent said nothing. His hands rested on his knees, perfectly still. But Harper saw his throat move. A single, hard swallow. And she understood that this man who terrified the entire city of Detroit was sitting in her living room, trying not to fall apart because a 6-year-old girl had decided he was safe. "I'm not going to trust you," Harper said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know how to do that." "That's okay. But I'm going to let you help Rosie, because she needs this surgery, and I can't give it to her. And if swallowing my pride is the price of keeping my sister alive, then I'll swallow it every day for the rest of my life." "That's enough." He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Harper, the protection money you owed the Iron Wolves, $2,600. Her back stiffened. "I'll pay it back. I just need—" "It's been returned. All of it. Not just yours, everyone's. Every family in East Side that Fang bled dry for the past 2 years. Every cent. The money is being distributed this week." Harper stared at him. "You did that?" "Fang did that. I simply insisted." "Where is Fang now?" "Gone. He won't be coming back." "And Brandon?" Vincent's jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Just enough. "Brandon confessed to everything. Assault, breaking and entering, criminal threats. Detective Morrison has the case. The prosecutor is filing charges this week. His lawyer is advising him to take a plea deal. 15 years. Harper's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter and held on, and her whole body shook, and she made a sound that was half laugh and half sob, and entirely the sound of a woman who'd been carrying a mountain on her back for 20 years and just felt it lift. 15 years, she repeated. Minimum. Could be 20 with the domestic violence enhancements. He can't get to us? No. He can't send someone? No, he has no connections left. The Iron Wolves are disbanded. His associates have scattered. He's alone in a cell at Wayne County, and he'll be alone for a very long time. Harper pressed her forehead against the counter. Her shoulders heaved. She cried without making a sound. The way she'd taught herself to cry in foster care, where noise meant punishment and tears meant weakness, and the only safe way to break was to break quietly. "You're safe, Harper," Vincent said from the doorway. "Both of you. I give you my word." She didn't lift her head. She couldn't. But she raised one hand, the one in the cast, and waved him away, and he understood. He closed the door softly behind him. In the hallway, he pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes. His hands were shaking again. The same tremor that had started the moment Rosie grabbed his sleeve. The tremor he couldn't control, couldn't command, couldn't suppress with the same iron discipline that governed everything else in his life. He called Leo from the car. The four women Fang trafficked. Maria, Tanya, Keisha, Jessica. Where are we? Maria Gutierrez is in Toledo, working at a nail salon under a fake name. She's been too scared to come back. I've got someone reaching out to her, carefully, through a women's shelter contact, not through us directly. She doesn't need more men showing up and telling her what to do. Good. What about Tanya Williams? Leo paused. The kind of pause that filled itself. Tanya's dead, boss. Overdose. 4 months ago. A motel outside Akron. She was 21 years old. Vincent's hand tightened around the phone until the case creaked. 21. A girl. Barely a woman. Dead in a motel because a man with gold chains decided she was product. Keisha and Jessica? Still looking. Keisha might be in Indiana. Jessica, I don't know yet. I've got people on it. Find them, whatever it takes. And Leo, when we find them, they get the same thing Harper got. Medical care, housing, whatever they need to start over. No strings. That's going to cost. I don't care what it costs. The days moved. 1, then 2, then 5, then 8. And in those days, something happened that Vincent didn't plan for, didn't anticipate, and couldn't control. Rosie happened. She called him every morning at exactly 7:15. Not because anyone told her to, not because Vincent had given her his number. She'd memorized it from hearing Harper say it once. Because Rosie's brain worked like that, absorbing everything, storing it, filing it away for later. "Good morning, Uncle Vin. Did you eat breakfast?" "Good morning, Rosie. Yes, I ate breakfast." "What did you eat?" "Toast." "That's boring. Liv made me pancakes. They were shaped like dinosaurs, but they looked more like blobs. Don't tell her I said that." Every morning, same time, same question, same gentle interrogation about his eating habits, as if a 6-year-old had appointed herself his nutritional supervisor. Vincent started eating breakfast, not toast, real breakfast, eggs, fruit, things that Rosie would approve of. Because he knew she'd ask, and he found that he couldn't lie to her. He could lie to judges, to federal agents, to men who held guns to his head, but he couldn't lie to a 6-year-old girl who called him Uncle Vin and asked if he'd eaten his vegetables. Day 9, 3 days before surgery, Vincent walked into Harper's apartment to find Rosie sitting on the floor, surrounded by crayons and paper, drawing furiously. She'd been drawing constantly since the hospital. Page after page, the same 2 figures holding hands. But today was different. Today there were 3 figures. "What are you drawing?" Vincent asked. "Us." Rosie held it up. 3 stick figures under a yellow sun. The tallest one had yellow hair and blue dots for eyes. The medium one had yellow hair and a square on her arm that was clearly a cast. The shortest one had curly yellow hair and a red heart drawn on her chest. They were all holding hands. "That's me?" Vincent pointed to the tall figure. "Obviously, you're the biggest." "Why is my head so square?" "Because you're always serious. Serious people have square heads. It's science." Vincent looked at that drawing, and something happened in his chest that he hadn't felt in 12 years. A warmth. A spreading, terrifying warmth that started behind his sternum and radiated outward until it reached his fingers and his toes and the backs of his eyes. He was in trouble. He knew it. He'd known it since the moment he'd picked Rosie up in the restaurant and she'd wrapped her arms around his neck. He was falling in love with this kid, not romantically, not in any way that could be misunderstood, but in the way that a man who'd lost his little sister looks at a little girl who reminds him of everything he'd buried and feels the grave open up and feels the dead thing inside him start to breathe again. "Uncle Vin?" Rosie was looking at him. "Are you crying?" No, he was, just barely. One rogue tear that he killed with the back of his hand before it made it past his cheekbone. "Something in my eye. You're a bad liar." "I know." Harper watched from the kitchen doorway. She'd been watching for days, watching Vincent with Rosie, watching for the slip, the tell, the moment the mask came off and the real motive revealed itself. She was a bloodhound for deception. She could smell it through walls. She found nothing. What she found instead was a man who answered a 6-year-old's phone calls at 7:15 every morning, who showed up with groceries he claimed were extra from his kitchen, who sat on the floor and drew pictures with crayons and let Rosie critique his artistic technique with savage honesty, who never once raised his voice, who never once made Harper feel small or stupid or indebted, who moved through their lives with a gentleness so at odds with his reputation that it felt like watching a hurricane learn to whisper. Day 10, 2 days before surgery. Harper found Vincent in the hallway outside the apartment, sitting on the top step of the stairs, staring at his phone. She sat down next to him, close but not touching. A careful distance that said, "I'm here, but I still have walls." "Rosie's scared," Harper said. "I know. She won't say it. She's putting on a brave face because she thinks if she's brave, I won't worry. She doesn't understand that I can see right through her." Harper rubbed her eyes with her good hand. "She asked me last night if it's going to hurt. The surgery. I told her they'd give her medicine to sleep and she wouldn't feel anything. She said, 'Will I wake up?' And I said yes. And she said, 'Promise?' And I promised." Harper's voice broke. "I promised her, Vincent. I looked my sister in the eye and I promised she'd wake up. And I don't know if that's true." 82% success rate. Dr. Reeves has performed this surgery over 300 times. 18%. Harper shook her head. "You know what I hear when someone says 82? I hear 18. Because my whole life has been the 18. My whole life has been the thing that shouldn't happen, happening. Mother who abandoned me, what are the odds? 8 foster homes, every one worse than the last. What are the odds? The one man I let myself trust turns out to be a monster. What are the odds? Every time there's been an 18% chance of the worst outcome, I've been standing right in the middle of it when it lands." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. From behind his ID, he slid out a small photograph, worn soft at the edges from years of handling. A girl, 14 years old, blonde hair in a ponytail, braces, a school uniform, smiling at the camera with the kind of joy that only exists in people who haven't learned to be afraid yet. "Emma," he said. Harper took the photograph carefully, holding it by the edges. She was 14 in that picture. Honor roll. She wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. She used to practice stitches on bananas and then make me eat the bananas, and they were terrible because they were full of thread. He almost smiled. Almost. "She was my reason, Harper. The same way Rosie is yours." "What happened?" "A rival family kidnapped her and my mother to pressure my father into a deal. My father, Antonio Malone, was a proud man. A stupid, proud man. He refused to negotiate because he thought it would make him look weak. He calculated the cost of giving in versus the cost of losing them, and he decided that his reputation was worth more than their lives." Harper's hand moved to her mouth. "I begged him. I got on my knees in front of his entire crew, and I begged. I told him I'd do anything, give up my position, leave the organization, disappear. I offered everything I had, and he looked at me and said, "We don't negotiate. That's the rule. Rules exist for a reason." 48 hours later, they found the bodies. Emma died shielding my mother. She threw herself over our mother's body and they shot through her to get to the woman underneath. She was 14 years old. She weighed 92 pounds. And she was braver in that moment than any man I've ever known. He took the photograph back, slid it into his wallet. His hands were steady now. The tremor was gone, replaced by something harder. I destroyed the Moretti family, every single one of them. It took me 6 months. And when it was done, I went to my father's office, and I told him that I was taking over his organization, and if he objected, I would add his name to the list. He retired to Florida. He died 3 years later. I didn't go to the funeral. Harper was crying again, quietly the way she always cried, tears running down her bruised face without sound. I sealed myself shut after Emma, Vincent said. 12 years, no connections, no love, no weakness. I became the ghost because ghosts don't feel anything. Ghosts don't lose people because they don't have anyone to lose. He turned to look at Harper directly. And then your sister walked into my restaurant with bare feet and blood on her hands, and she looked at me with Emma's eyes and she said, "Please." And 12 years of concrete and iron and everything I'd built to protect myself cracked open like it was made of paper. "I'm terrified, Vincent." Harper's voice was barely audible. "Not of you, of this, of letting someone in, of believing this is real. Because if it's not, if this turns out to be another trap, another lie, another man who promises safety and delivers pain, I won't survive it. Not this time. I've used up everything I have. It's real." "How do I know that?" "You don't, not yet, but Rosie knows. She knew it the moment she grabbed my sleeve. Children see things that adults have been hurt too many times to see." He paused. "Trust her judgment, even if you can't trust mine yet." Harper wiped her face with the back of her cast, an absurd gesture that made her wince and almost laugh at the same time. "She told me yesterday that you have a square head because you're too serious." She told me the same thing. She's not wrong. And there, right there, sitting on the stairs in a hallway that smelled like old carpet and laundry soap, something shifted between them. Not a declaration, not a moment from a movie, just two people who'd been broken by the world looking at each other and recognizing the cracks. Day 11, one day before surgery. Dr. Reeves arrived from Baltimore, a 53-year-old woman with gray-streaked hair and hands that had saved more children than she could count. She met with Rosie in the hospital room and spent 40 minutes explaining the surgery using a stuffed bear and a red marker. "We're going to fix the hole in your heart," Dr. Reeves said. "See this little mark on Mr. Bear? That's where we go in. And when we're done, your heart will work perfectly. Will it hurt? You'll be asleep the whole time. When you wake up, your chest will be sore for a little while, but then it gets better. Every day, a little better." Rosie looked at the stuffed bear, then at Dr. Reeves, then at Harper, who was holding her good hand so tight her knuckles were white, then at Vincent, who stood by the door trying to look calm and failing spectacularly. "Uncle Vin," Rosie said, "will you be here when I wake up?" The room went still. Harper's breath caught. Dr. Reeves looked at Vincent with a curiosity that went beyond medical interest. Vincent crossed the room. He knelt beside Rosie's bed, the same way he'd knelt in the restaurant, eye level, face to face, and he took her small hand in both of his. "I will be here when you go to sleep. I will be here when you wake up, and I will be here every single day after that. I promise." "You promised before," Rosie said, "when you said Liv would be okay," and she was. "And this time will be the same." Rosie squeezed his hand. Then she leaned forward and whispered in his ear, loud enough for everyone to hear, I'm a little bit scared. I know, that's okay. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. It means you're brave anyway. Like when I ran to find you? Exactly like that. Rosie settled back on her pillow. She pulled the stuffed bear against her chest, and she said, with the absolute certainty that only a child can summon, "Okay, I'm ready." Harper stood at the window with her back to the room, and her shoulders shook, and she pressed her cast against the glass to keep from making a sound. Vincent saw her. Dr. Reeves saw her. Rosie saw her. "Liv, stop crying. I already told you I'm brave." Harper laughed through her tears. "You're the bravest person I know, baby." "Braver than Uncle Vin?" Harper turned around. Her eyes met Vincent's across the room. Swollen, bruised, still healing, but alive. Fierce, full of something that looked like the beginning of trust. "Yeah," Harper said softly, "braver than Uncle Vin." Vincent didn't argue, because she was right. That night, after Rosie fell asleep and the hospital went quiet, Vincent sat alone in the chapel on the first floor. He hadn't been inside a church in 12 years, not since Emma's funeral, when he'd walked out during the priest's eulogy because the man had said, "God's plan," and Vincent had wanted to burn the building down. He didn't pray. He didn't know how anymore. Instead, he sat in the back pew and pulled out his wallet and looked at Emma's photograph. "I found someone," he said quietly. "Two someones, actually. A woman who's been through hell and kept going, and a little girl who reminds me so much of you that it hurts to breathe when I look at her." The photograph didn't answer. Photographs never do. "Her surgery is tomorrow, and I'm scared, Em. I'm so scared, because I already lost you, and I can't lose another one. I don't have enough left inside me to survive that twice." He pressed the photograph against his forehead and closed his eyes. "If you're up there, if any of this means anything, watch over her tomorrow, please. She's 6 years old, and she has bare feet, and she's braver than I ever was, and she deserves more time. She deserves a whole life." He sat there until dawn. Then he folded the photograph away, buttoned his jacket, straightened his tie, and walked upstairs to keep a promise. The surgical team took Rosie at 6:47 a.m. She was sitting up in bed when they came for her, wearing a hospital gown covered in cartoon elephants that she'd picked out herself. Henry the stuffed elephant was tucked under her arm. Her blonde curls were pulled back with a clip that a nurse had given her, and her face was calm in a way that made every adult in the room feel like a coward. Harper walked beside the gurney, holding Rosie's hand, matching the pace of the orderlies step for step. Her cast bumped against the railing with every stride, and she didn't notice. Her eyes never left her sister's face. Vincent walked on the other side. Rosie's free hand gripped two of his fingers. She couldn't wrap her whole hand around his, so she just held on to what she could reach. They stopped at the double doors to the surgical wing. Beyond those doors, Harper and Vincent couldn't follow. The anesthesiologist was waiting inside with a mask and a countdown from 10, and on the other side of that countdown was either everything or nothing. "Okay, sweetheart," the nurse said gently. "This is where your sister and your uncle wait for you. We'll take good care of you in there." Rosie looked at Harper first. Always Harper first. "Liv, don't cry while I'm gone." Harper's face was already crumbling. She forced a smile that cost her everything she had. "I'm not crying." "You're about to, I can tell. Your chin does that wobbly thing." Harper laughed. One sharp, broken laugh that turned into a sob halfway through. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against Rosie's. "I love you more than everything in the whole world, Rosie Dawson. You hear me? More than everything. I know, Liv, you tell me every day. And I'll tell you every day after this too. Even when I'm old, like 30? Even when you're 30, even when you're 100. Rosie kissed Harper's cheek. Then she turned to Vincent. She studied his face with those enormous blue eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at him in a restaurant full of killers, the same eyes that had broken through 12 years of ice in a single moment. "Uncle Vin, You promised you'd be here when I wake up. I'll be here. What if the surgery takes a really long time? Then I'll wait a really long time. What if it takes forever? Vincent leaned down. His forehead touched hers. Then I'll wait forever. Rosie smiled. That smile, the one that had nothing to do with bravery or performance or putting on a face for the adults. A real smile. The smile of a child who believed, with absolute and unshakable certainty, that the people she loved would be there when she opened her eyes. Okay, she said, I'm ready. Let's fix my heart. The orderlies wheeled her through the double doors. Rosie held Henry above her head and waved him at Harper and Vincent like a puppet. Henry says, don't worry, she called out. Henry says everything's going to be fine. The doors swung shut. The hallway went quiet. And Harper Dawson, who had survived abandonment and foster care and abuse and poverty and every single thing the world had thrown at her for 28 years, slid down the wall and sat on the hospital floor and fell completely apart. Vincent sat down beside her, on the floor, in a suit that cost more than her old apartment's annual rent. He sat on the cold linoleum next to a woman he'd known for 12 days, and he didn't touch her, and he didn't speak. He just sat there, shoulder almost touching hers, and let her cry. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Harper cried until there was nothing left, until the sobs dried up and her body was empty, and all that remained was a hollow, trembling exhaustion. I can't lose her, she whispered. Her voice was raw, scraped down to bone. She's the only good thing in my entire life. If she doesn't come out of that room, I don't have a reason, Vincent. I don't have a reason for any of it. She's going to come out of that room. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know that Dr. Reeves has done this surgery 312 times. And I know that she flew here from Baltimore because she looked at Rosie's file and said, I want this one. I know that the surgical team in there is the best that money can buy. And I know that your sister is the most stubborn human being I've ever met. And I once watched a man survive 3 gunshot wounds on pure spite. And Rosie has more fight in her little finger than he had in his whole body. Harper turned her head and looked at him. Mascara tracked down her cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her cast rested awkwardly on her knee. She looked broken and fierce and exhausted and beautiful in the way that only real, hard-earned survival can make a person beautiful. Why are you sitting on the floor? She asked. Because you're sitting on the floor. You're going to ruin your suit. I have other suits. Harper stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done voluntarily with another human being since she was 8 years old. She leaned her head against his shoulder, just rested it there, like setting down something heavy she'd been carrying too long. Vincent didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't do anything that might break whatever fragile thing had just formed between them. He sat perfectly still and let her lean and felt the weight of her head against his shoulder and thought, This is what Emma would have wanted. Not the empire, not the fear. This. They waited. 1 hour, 2, 3. Every minute felt like a year. Nurses walked by and offered chairs and coffee and reassurance. And Harper refused all of it because moving meant leaving this spot, and leaving this spot felt like breaking a spell. Vincent's phone buzzed 14 times. Leo. Business. The world outside continuing to spin. He ignored every call. At the 3-hour mark, Harper spoke. Tell me about her. Emma. Tell me something you've never told anyone. Vincent was quiet for so long that Harper thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, She used to write me letters, even though we lived in the same house. She'd slip them under my door at night, handwritten on notebook paper with hearts over the eyes. She called them her Vinny reports. They'd say things like, Dear Vinny, today I got an A on my science test, and Tommy Garrett tried to kiss me at recess, and I told him I'd rather kiss a frog. Also, I think you're sad and I wish you'd tell me why. Love, Emma. P.S. You're my favorite brother. Don't tell anyone. P.S. You're my only brother, so it doesn't count, but I'd pick you anyway. Harper made a sound that was half laugh, half cry. She sounds incredible. She was. She was the best of all of us. The only Malone who had a chance at being something good. And I failed her. You didn't fail her. Your father failed her. I should have gone. I should have ignored my father and gone after them myself. I had the men. I had the firepower. I could have. You were 26, and your father gave an order, and you've been punishing yourself for following it ever since. Harper lifted her head and looked at him. You didn't kill Emma, Vincent. You didn't kidnap her. You didn't refuse to negotiate. Your father did that, and the men who took her did that. You were a 26-year-old kid who trusted his father to do the right thing, and his father didn't. Vincent's jaw worked. His eyes were bright, too bright, and he blinked hard and looked away. No one's ever said that to me before. Then everyone you know is an idiot. He almost smiled. Almost. The ghost of a smile that flickered across his face like candlelight before the wind took it. Hour 4. Dr. Reeves pushed through the double doors, and Harper was on her feet so fast she nearly blacked out from the head rush. Vincent caught her elbow and steadied her, and they stood together facing the surgeon, and the world compressed down to a single point. The expression on Dr. Reeves's face. She was smiling. The surgery was successful, Dr. Reeves said. The ventricular defect has been fully repaired. Her heart is functioning normally. She's in recovery now. She's going to be groggy for a few hours, but she's stable. She's strong. Harper's knees buckled. Vincent caught her. She grabbed his shirt with her good hand and buried her face in his chest. And she cried harder than she'd cried all morning. Harder than she'd cried in the hallway. Harder than she'd cried in 28 years of a life that had given her very little reason to believe in happy endings. Thank you, she said into his shirt. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Vincent's arms closed around her. He held her the way he'd held Rosie that first night, carefully, gently, like something precious and fragile. And he pressed his chin against the top of her head and closed his eyes and let the tears fall. Just 2, just enough. Can I see her? Harper pulled back, wiping her face. Give us 30 minutes to get her settled in recovery. Then absolutely. The longest 30 minutes of Harper's life. She paced, she sat, she stood, she paced again. Vincent watched her from the chair and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Some waiting just has to be endured. Then the nurse came and they walked down the corridor together. And they opened the door to recovery room 4. And there she was, Rosie. Blonde curls spread across a white pillow. Wires and monitors and an IV. But underneath all of it, that face, those cheeks, those closed eyes that fluttered when the door opened. Her eyes cracked open, foggy, confused. She blinked at the ceiling, then slowly turned her head. Liv? Her voice was a thread. Harper was at her side in 2 steps. She grabbed Rosie's hand and held it against her cheek and said, I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Did they fix my heart? They fixed your heart. Rosie's foggy eyes moved past Harper to the doorway, where Vincent stood, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who'd just been granted something he never thought he'd have again. Uncle Vin, a sleepy smile. You waited. I waited. Was it a really long time? The longest. But not forever? Not forever. Rosie's smile widened, drowsy and lopsided and perfect. I told you Henry said everything would be fine. You should listen to Henry. He's very smart for an elephant. Vincent laughed. And this time, it wasn't almost. It wasn't a ghost or an echo or a flicker. It was a real laugh, full and warm and slightly rusty from 12 years of disuse, like a door being opened for the first time in a decade. Harper looked at him when he laughed, really looked, and something in her face changed, something permanent, something irreversible, like a lock clicking open for the last time. 6 months later, Rosie ran through the doors of Detroit Children's Hospital, arms spread wide like airplane wings, pink light-up shoes flashing with every step. Her last checkup, her last follow-up. Dr. Reeves had flown in from Baltimore one final time to confirm what every test had already shown. Rosie Dawson's heart was perfect, strong, whole, beating exactly the way a 6-year-old's heart should beat. "I'm fast now, Liv," Rosie sprinted across the parking lot. "I'm the fastest kid in my class. Watch." Harper watched. Standing in the spring sunshine with her arm out of the cast, her face healed, her eyes clear. She watched her sister run, really run, for the first time in her life, without turning blue, without getting dizzy, without the terror of a heart that could stop at any moment. "She's going to be a track star," Vincent said. He stood beside Harper, hands in his pockets, squinting against the sun. "She's going to be whatever she wants to be." On Madison Avenue, a new sign hung above the door of what used to be a failing flower shop called Petal and Thorn. The new sign read, "Rosie's Garden." Harper had argued about it for 3 days. She'd refused the keys. She'd told Vincent she wouldn't take charity. She'd used every argument she had: pride, independence, self-reliance, stubbornness. Vincent had set the keys on the counter and said, "Consider it an investment. I expect fresh flowers every Sunday." Then he'd walked out. And Harper had stood there, holding the keys, and she'd called him a stubborn, impossible, infuriating man, and she'd opened the shop the next morning at 7. Tuesday and Thursday nights, she took business classes at Detroit Community College. Vincent paid the tuition. She stopped arguing about it after the 3rd time because she realized something that surprised her. Accepting help wasn't the same as being weak. It was the same lesson Rosie had been trying to teach her all along. Some people are just nice, Liv. East Side Detroit was different now. The iron wolves were gone, truly gone, not just scattered but dissolved. The protection money had been returned, every cent, and the families who'd lived under Fang's thumb for years were standing up straighter, opening their doors wider, letting their children play outside after dark. Maria Gutierrez came home from Toledo. She moved into an apartment 3 blocks from Harper's shop and got a job at a bakery on Michigan Avenue. Keisha Monroe was found in Indianapolis and brought back with bus fare and a fresh start. Jessica Park was located in a shelter in Pittsburgh and offered the same. Tanya Williams couldn't be brought back. She was 21 years old and she died alone in a motel, and there was nothing anyone could do about that. But Vincent made sure her grandmother's remaining medical bills were paid, and he made sure there was a headstone with Tanya's name on it in Woodlawn Cemetery, and every month fresh flowers from Rosie's garden appeared at the grave. Brandon Cole took the plea deal, 15 years, no parole eligibility for 12. Detective Morrison built the case so tight that Brandon's own lawyer told him a trial would only make it worse. The day the sentence was handed down, Harper sat in the courtroom and watched the man who'd broken her face and her wrist and her ribs get led away in handcuffs. And she felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, not anger, just a quiet, bone-deep relief. Like setting down a suitcase she'd been carrying up an endless flight of stairs. Simmons and Hartley, Fang's pet detectives, were suspended pending an internal affairs investigation. 3 weeks later, both were terminated. 2 months after that, federal charges. The system, for once, ate its own. A Sunday in late April. Afternoon light poured through the windows of Rosie's garden. Flowers everywhere, roses, lilies, sunflowers bursting from buckets and vases, and every available surface. The air smelled like earth and pollen, and the coffee Harper was brewing behind the counter. Rosie sat on the floor, drawing. She graduated from crayons to colored pencils, and her stick figures had evolved into something approaching actual human shapes. She was working on a new piece, 3 figures in a garden, surrounded by flowers, under a sky that was more colors than any real sky had ever been. Vincent sat in a leather armchair by the window, holding a newspaper he wasn't reading. He came every Sunday, always the same chair, always a newspaper, always pretending to read while actually watching Rosie draw and Harper arrange flowers and the afternoon light move across the floor. Uncle Vin? Rosie climbed onto the arm of his chair, the way she always did, uninvited, unapologetic, as if his personal space belonged to her by natural law. Yes? Why did you save Liv? The shop went quiet. Harper stood behind the counter with her back turned, but her hands stopped moving. Her shoulders tightened. She didn't turn around. She waited. Vincent set the newspaper down. He looked at Rosie, at her blonde curls, her blue eyes, the scar on her chest that was still pink in healing, the light-up shoes that flashed even when she was sitting still. Because someone reminded me that even darkness needs light. Who told you that? A very brave little girl. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something warm and cracked and real, like sunlight through a broken window. She was 6 years old. She had bare feet and a torn nightgown. And she did something no one else in this entire city had the courage to do. Rosie tilted her head. She sounds cool. Do I know her? Vincent smiled. Not the cold, calculated smile that the underworld knew. Not the polite, empty smile he wore for politicians and prosecutors. A real smile. Warm, slightly crooked, broken at the edges in a way that made it more beautiful, not less. The smile of a man who'd been dead inside for 12 years and was finally, carefully, learning to live again. You might say that, Rosie grinned and went back to her drawing. Harper turned around slowly. Her eyes found Vincent's across the small, flower-filled room. And in that look, that single, silent look, 1,000 words passed between them. Gratitude too big for language. Understanding too deep for explanation. And something else. Something that neither of them had named yet because they were both too bruised and too careful and too terrified of breaking something that felt this fragile and this real. But it was there, in the space between them, growing, quiet, patient, waiting for them to be ready. Vincent picked up his newspaper. Harper turned back to her flowers. Rosie hummed a song, off-key, wrong words in half the places, and drew 3 figures holding hands in a garden where the sun never stopped shining. And outside, spring moved through Detroit like a promise kept, because sometimes the smallest hands hold the greatest power to change everything. Sometimes saving someone else is how we finally save ourselves. And sometimes a 6-year-old girl with bare feet and a broken heart can walk into a room full of monsters and remind them what it means to be human. If you're watching this and you know someone who's struggling, reach out. If you're the one struggling, hold on. Your story isn't over. The best chapters haven't been written yet, and dawn is always, always coming.